Thank you so much, Patrick. Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa. I am from RTI International, and welcome to the May edition of our Catalyze webinar series. I am very excited about today's topic, which will cover the broad impacts and considerations of artificial intelligence on medical product development. Our presenter, Ms. Diane Earp, is the Vice President of Corporate Regulatory Compliance at RTI International and is also a technical project lead for the Catalyze program. Diane has over 25 years of experience in regulatory affairs and quality assurance applicable to drugs, biologics, and medical devices. And lucky for us, also has a vested interest in the dynamic world of artificial intelligence. So with that, I am happy to pass the presentation on to Diane.
Thank you, Marissa. And thanks to all of those that have given up their lunch hour to hear me talk about one of my passionate projects here. And also to those that are interested in how they can apply artificial intelligence to their medical products development. It's an exciting opportunity and a very dynamic environment. To set the stage, I actually prepared this presentation about a week ago. It was outdated by Wednesday of last week, and by Monday when we finalized it, it needed to be updated again today. So very dynamic environment. My disclaimers include the fact that some of this information is already changing, and it's the objective of the conversation is just to get you thinking about how your research might benefit from planning ahead and strategically implementing the aspects of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So with that, next slide, please, Patrick. So what is artificial intelligence? Human intelligence or behaviors demonstrated by machines. We usually think of it as pattern recognition, image recognition, voice recognition, or understanding of natural languages. Recently, in 2022, the International Medical Device Regulators Forum gave it a formal definition: a branch of computer science, statistics, and engineering that uses algorithms or models to perform tasks and exhibit behaviors such as learning, making decisions, and making predictions. The reasons for the rapid rise in the adaptation of this kind of technology is because we have vastly progressed into better computing capabilities, supercomputing, and we have better access to the historical data that in the past was stored in boxes. We now have digitization and electronic data management. We have new algorithms that are coming out that can seek and find information that prior to today we didn't even know existed. The trends, the issues that show up that no one else could have identified are suddenly presenting themselves in patterns of recognition. So it's a dynamic world we're in right now. It's something that started back in 1950s, believe it or not, and was actually first thought about way back then and kind of again surfaced in the 70s, but didn't really become something of relevance until the last 4 or 5 years. It's really taken hold. When I was talking about this with the group and expressing my passion, I had the opportunity to take a course on trends in healthcare at George Washington University last semester. And one of the things that came out of that was artificial intelligence catching on. And as I started to look at this, I saw the pattern and the progression in history of that of the internet. I had the opportunity early in my career. I'm older than dirt, so I was around when one of the project directors of DARPA was able to share with me his experience in the development of the internet. And much like what we saw then, started out as a utility that was very narrow and then progressed into something that was released to the world and became so dynamically utilized that we couldn't even get guardrails put up around the regulatory aspects of it. I see artificial intelligence going in that same direction. It's already affecting us in our everyday lives. We have the little boxes sitting in the corner, the hockey pucks that will tell us what the temperature is, set timers for everything from cooking to waking up. It gets intelligent enough to understand what genre of music and movies you want to watch and present you with those opportunities. So artificial intelligence is kind of permeated into our world, and we've already accepted it, but we haven't really thought about its utility in medicine until very, very recently. Next slide, please, Patrick. The potentials, as many folks have said, including the Google CEO and a number of other technology experts, is that it's as profound as electricity. The possibilities are endless. And we can, as I was just saying to you, we see it in so many different levels, from marketing, finding out what we're shopping and buying. Amazon is so deep in telling you what you might like to see, and how many of us are gullible enough to click the button and go, "Ooh, I didn't even know that was there. Let me buy that now." To our homes, I was telling folks a couple of weeks ago, I had a power outage, and unbeknownst to me, my home turned on me immediately. I couldn't open the front door, couldn't get out of the garage, my lights wouldn't come on, my TV didn't work. I was absolutely stunned at the level of technology that my bioengineering daughter had put into the house that I had just accepted as everyday way of life. It's coming at us in so many different directions. The delivery drones, the military weapons, of course, is another aspect that I won't even go into, but early disease detection, robotics and robotic devices that help folks maintain mobility, the radiological medical imaging, where we can now see tumors and identify progression of disease states that we can't visually or in under other circumstances identify. And of course, our in vitro diagnostics are getting smarter. We can now look for what is leading to what could have been a false positive is now a confirmed positive, or maybe it's confirmed as truly negative. So it's getting our in vitro diagnostics tests even more capable and with higher sensitivity and specificity than actually the test was thought to have. These are all things that we've seen develop pretty quickly, because the medical device arena, or devices themselves that then become deemed medical because of the claims that they support, has been kind of the first realm in which we've seen activity moving forward. But as of this week, we saw something come out of the FDA about a week ago today, a 33-page discussion paper on how AI and machine learning will support and help the development of drugs and biologics and combination products. So we've now just moved into a new world where things are going to start being applied even more broadly in the medical healthcare world for you to consider. And I strongly urge you to get your hands on that document. We've given you the web page reference. Get that document, read it, and engage with the agency to help them learn from what you know and what you need to give you guidance and expectations moving forward. Again, we're trying to catch up. The ability is out there. Now we need to find out, how do we form the structure to make sure it's safe and effective? Next slide, please. So why is this impactful? From a current global landscape, we have a highly challenging environment demanding innovative approaches. COVID gave us a whole new world to look at and a new way of operating. We've had unprecedented global transmission of diseases and emerging health issues that have, up until COVID, been contained to regions or specific areas, but were demonstrating their capability of expansion with the pandemic that took us to our knees for a number of years now. Fortunately, our scientists and all of you, our agencies, our governments came together and saw a pathway forward. I'm hoping that we've learned from those aspects and that we can then benefit and take away the positives from the negatives and figure out how to keep this from ever happening again. That's my hope, and I think artificial intelligence and machine learning will help us do that. By 2050, the world's population over the age of 60 years old will be about 2 billion. So the need for healthcare professionals that continues to grow in shortages is going to be even more profound. And older adults are also living longer with chronic conditions and disabilities. So how can robotics, how can these early detections, how can drug development enhance and overcome the needs that this group of our population is going to need in the not so distant future? Next slide, please. Let's talk about some of the enablers and barriers to our healthcare market adaptation. Just like any other new kind of science, it is based on the technology and the data, the people and their experiences, and then it moves into the governance and trust aspects of how we make sure it's not going to hurt someone as opposed to the goal of helping. Partnerships and new business models evolve out of these kinds of technological developments. And this is what's going to help us get the governance and trust that we need to move forward. The barriers we've got to overcome: missing and disparate data. It's one of those situations where gaps are going to create more problems than benefits. So we have to make sure that we can get as much and as good a data as possible built into the systems. We already see this to a degree. We have data set requirements that the agency has now put on us a few years ago for drug and device information being submitted for approval or clearance. We've got situations now for ECTD formatting of submissions to the agency, such that data is going in, both written and numeric, in formats that are consistently the same. And that's how we reduce the complexity, the challenges we have of disparate data sets and proprietary software. I'm responsible for an archive of intellectual property, and I have to tell you, over the 60 years of RTI's Research Institute's existence, there are boatloads of information, and that's a technical term, that is in proprietary software that we are constantly figuring out how to break into and update to usable information. So again, we have history, we have information, but is it in a manner, is it accessible? And can we reduce the complexity so that we can get to it easily? That supports our computer hardware designs and our limitations there. We have to work through updating and getting on board with the new technology that supports the supercomputing capabilities. That's an investment, a cost that will be recovered dramatically over time, but again, it goes to the infrastructure needed. And then there's the lack of talent and expertise. As I said, I'm older than dirt. I can see the vision, but I have not been trained on the actual ways of utilizing this kind of technology. Computational scientists are going to become very important to integrating into your team such that they can look at your science and tell you what the potential is or what it can tell you, what that data that you know how to get in the labs, in your animal studies, and in humans really is telling you about their disease state or the claims that you're trying to get. So enhancing your claims will be very important. Key enablers, new talent. We've got to find the folks. We've got to get the right people to the table and integrate them into a collaborative effort. Evidence-based results, that becomes real-world data is becoming more and more significant and important. And how do we get to that without violating privacy or violating informed consents? Those kinds of elements of our checks and balances have to be rethought in the context of how would we reuse this data beyond its initial application to benefit more broadly the patients that we are hoping to serve. Entrepreneurial spirits. Obviously, folks such as myself who get real excited about this kind of thing really need to drive the desire, get these partnerships and new business models defined such that these collaborations become easier instead of more difficult. Where do you find that computational scientist who understands the aspects of developing an in vitro diagnostic test and what it means when you say it's positive or that it's negative or that it's indicative of, fill in the blanks, such that they can help you look at the data and see how to draw from that data the patterns and trends you need. And of course, there's the regulations. We're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. Knowing how to navigate the regulations is always a challenge for scientists. That's why I have had a job for so many years. Learning how to translate the data to meaningful information that shows you have complied with the regulations. It's all about the documentation, we always say, how you did what you did, what you have as a result, how it supports your conclusions will continue to be important even as we implement artificial intelligence. There's a lot of headway being made there. The FDA, the EMA, or not EMA, but UK's MHRA now, that's a little different, and Health Canada have already established the 10 principles of good machine learning practices. If you haven't seen those, I would recommend that you pull those up. It's really kind of indicative and insightful as to where things are going. Next slide, please. So what's the current landscape? How do you get paid to do this? How are you going to get your funding that's needed to advance your research? There's a lot going on. It's already recognized as the importance of both artificial intelligence and robotics. It's a major opportunity towards meeting many of these challenges that we talked about earlier on in our aging population, and across a number of different pathways to getting better drug development, better safety monitoring, better claims, if you will, for biologics, drugs, and devices. In the UK, there's a program for AI and health and care awards that was set up to accelerate the safe and ethical and effective adaptation of AI in healthcare. It was a record level of backing and funding in the UK at £14.1 billion, and it's in place right now from 23 to 25. The new ARPA-H Institute at NIH has funding at $2.5 billion for this new initiative in FY24. I'm not sure where that stands at this point. That number may be a little off, but that was where it was when I put the slides together. Healthcare AI startups are at a record high. When we talked about business initiatives, experienced investors have come forward in the third quarter of 2020 with 122 deals, making up more than $2 billion with continued growth expected. It's just on the rise. This is a very lucrative business. It's something that people are differentiating themselves with, and the early adapters have jumped on board very quickly. Next slide, please. Challenges. How do we address intellectual property rights? You may have heard of some of the stories about an approval that was in for IP that was then pulled because artificial intelligence came into play and there was no way to show exactly where the information came from and who owned it. Then they reinstated it. So there's a lot of back and forth going on about filing for intellectual property, finding where the data came from and was it legitimate data, and then validating its utility is going to continue to be a challenge. And that's where the regulators are trying to define some pathways forward. Some of the regulations we have in place, software as a medical device, to a degree can be used effectively here and has been so far. We'll talk about some of the approvals we've seen today, but there's also some missing elements that we have to consider. How do we regulate these things? Regulations control access to personal information today. The health information that is out there is protected under HIPAA, under GDPR, under a number of different state legislations. But the artificial intelligence gathers everything in its pathway. So how do we limit what it goes after and what it becomes aware of is going to be just as important as how we get the door open for it to go in and get what we need it to get. There's a constantly changing set of parameters to be tested and validated. Change control has taken on a whole new world. Oh, I see. Yeah, it was $1 billion spent this year and an additional $1.5 billion over the following. Thank you for the ARPA-H update. There's constantly changing sets of parameters to be tested and validated. Change control, as I said, takes on a whole new meaning here. And it's a situation where what do you consider change and what do you consider the evolving expectation? And again, it's going to go to how we document and how we control. Garbage in and garbage out. We've always heard that saying, if you get bad data in, you're going to get bad information out. And so we have to figure out ways to ensure the credibility of what the artificial intelligence is gaining and what the machine is learning from. There's war stories out there already. We hear about, I was listening to a story the other day about a software team for a medical device firm went out to an app to help them debug a source code. And they didn't realize that in doing so, they were giving it access to pull the proprietary source code back into its knowledge base. And in a matter of days, their competitors had their proprietary source code for their medical device. And that was a really big deal that came out in one of the meetings that folks were attending and put shockwaves through a lot of companies. How we use these artificial intelligence apps that are flying out across the internet is going to be critical to every institute and every organization's future. The universities are already putting out policies about what kind of apps you can use and how you can rely on what it's telling you for dissertations and homework assignments and responses to learning to show that you are actually capable of doing what you've signed up to do to get the degrees. It's also an issue for proprietary companies and for our ability to share information for training purposes and for scientific growth versus loss of control of your IP, as we talked about earlier. There's a lot of other things we could talk about here, and I could go into much more detail, but again, I'm going to try not to take up your whole lunch hour if I can, but I love this stuff, so I'll keep going if you let me. Let's change the slide, please, Patrick. So let's talk about the Food and Drug Administration perspective, because that's our big regulatory body here. They have jumped on the bandwagon, and for the last few years, starting back with a prior commissioner who saw this as a wave of the future, they see it has the potential to improve automation and learning, which is already happening, efficacy of diagnostics, regulatory assessments, and post-marketing surveillance. And that's where they're headed in this new discussion item paper, if you look at it very closely. They see it as increasing the accuracy of predictive modeling, enabling effective automation, and leveraging knowledge management resources to improve their regulatory reviews. A reduction in the cycle for getting a drug approved or a device cleared. We've seen it minusculely move in the past. I remember when we automated many years ago, the first attempt at sending in an electronic submission for a medical device 510K. It went from a 90-day cycle to 35 days. And that was in a test environment where we wanted to see, would this really benefit? Would it make a difference? We've seen how quickly the timelines can reduce when all of the reviewers have access to the information. If you add to that into the artificial intelligence to be able to point out to the reviewers at the FDA where there's trends or where there's information that they need to focus on, again, it reduces the cycle of getting products to the market, helps the commercialization aspects of new healthcare products, and also benefits the patients in that they get it better and faster. It focuses on improvement to post-market surveillance, seeing where there's a trend in something before it becomes a visual safety issue with patients dying is critical and could help all of us, in particular when it comes to things like medical devices that are failing. Next slide, please. To give you an idea of how fast this is moving, we have, as of last week, it was 689 entries in the FDA website. If you search for artificial intelligence, it's now 691. And I think it's probably more than that if you looked today. I haven't looked today. You can see I pulled some of the timelines just to give you an idea of kind of how this is evolving. In 2018, the marketing authorization of artificial intelligence-based device to detect diabetes-related eye problems was one of the first to come out on the slate. The statement for FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, I told you, he stepped forward and saw this as a new framework, and his vision and his strategy is coming to life several years later. There was a marketing authorization in 2020 for the first cardiac ultrasound software that used artificial intelligence to guide the user. Again, very groundbreaking activities here. In 21, the FDA released artificial intelligence and a machine learning action plan, that this is where we're headed. They're very good at telling us, we're going in this direction, we need your help. Let's get it started here. And that's what they're asking for now. They want to learn from the market and have the market learn and help them develop the right kind of guidances. In April of 2021, we saw the first device that uses AI to help detect potential signs of colon cancer. Again, an example of what we were talking about advancing. And then in April of this year, we saw the recommendations for a predetermined change control plan for AI. Enabled device software functions. It's a draft guidance, but it is the one out there to help folks start to see how to apply what we know how to do before to the world today and what's missing. Where are the gaps in our regulations and our guidance? Again, it's a draft for comment, and you should feel, I urge you to comment if you have that background to get the agency to see your input and help them develop better plans for the future. Next slide, please. The popular areas of research interest at FDA include data augmentation. I tell you this, please forgive me for all the words on the paper, but I highlighted the areas for you as scientists to think about: data augmentation, study design and analysis methods, non-clinical phantoms and test methods for assessing specific imaging performance. I have the honor and privilege of working with several of the NIH-funded researchers who are already using these phantoms effectively. Imaging phantoms and computational models to support QI, adaptive AI ML algorithms to support non-clinical test method development, robust AI to variations in data acquisition factors. All of these ideas are out there that the agency is interested in working with companies and with funding agencies to develop. Reproducibility for digital pathology applications. Generalizability of AI performance in digital pathology applications again. Next slide, please. These are just some things for you to consider. Reviewing regulatory submissions is going to take on a whole new life when we start to apply AI to this. The clinical trial results can be analyzed more comprehensively and expeditiously, and we're going to see more and different questions coming out of the agency when we submit these data sets. We need to be able to know what they're going to see before they see it so that we are prepared to address their concerns. Processing and evaluation of safety reports. Again, looking to see if there's something that's starting to trend that may not be self-evident, or some kind of shared early symptoms or signs that we have not seen before. And the other thing is analyzing safety reports to see if they really are a safety report. Pharmacometrics, advanced precision medicine, computer models that use genomic data. All of our genomic data out there has such powerful abilities to tell us what's going to happen in the human body. These computer artificial intelligence applications can fast track that into even better ways of identifying early symptoms and early signs of disease states. Image blending, regulatory decision making. Again, expediting approvals is always a game changer for companies. You have to plan that you're not going to get a response back from the agency for up to 2 years. What if you knew that was only going to be 6 months, or you'd have a preliminary decision in days? It's a phenomenal concept to think about and how your businesses would benefit from that. Commercial drug manufacturing, improving quality decision making. Our manufacturing repetitive actions that produce consistent product can be triggered to identify trending off of that pathway or out of spec. Next slide, please. So I had to add this slide as a breaking news. On the 10th is when this document I told you about came out. It's a discussion paper. It's 33 pages long, and it's a request for feedback. They want to have individuals engaged. Some of the things that I noted is that the drug and biologic applications in 2021, they had more than 100 that came in for drugs and biologics that involved AL and machine learning. So it's trending rapidly, and getting on board with that and getting more and more. I mean, more than 100 sounds phenomenally large, but I think it's a drop in the bucket of what it could be. CDER has an artificial intelligence steering committee now. CBER, you'll hear in the discussion paper, talks about the BEST system, which is data source, methods, and tools to conduct epidemiology studies and surveillance. CDRH has its DH Center of Excellence, Digital Health, and has been involved in the good machine learning practices evolution. So you're getting a lot of different elements, and I was talking with Mike Peck earlier about the elements that are coming into play at the institutes, which I think folks have been putting in the chat. I was trying not to distract myself by reading those too many, but we have folks online too, I'm sure can give you much more information than I have about what is coming and what is out there to help you take your science to the next level. Next slide, please. So things to consider as you move in that direction. Artificial intelligence creates challenges, much like the introduction of the internet. We talked about that decades ago. Look at how the internet has progressed us forward. Look at, as the CEO of Google said, electricity changed our world. Artificial intelligence and machine learning have that potential to be as evolutionary and to change the way we function both at home and at work and in our development of healthcare delivery in the next few years. It's rapidly changing on a daily basis. So I urge you to stay abreast of those changes and apply it to the science that you are involved in. It will alter our regulatory approval pathways. The de novo is probably the most defined mechanism at this point from the traditional paths, but and it will give an avenue for new product codes to be identified. But there's going to have to be other ways that are implemented both in the drug development and biologics environment as well to help fast track this alternate regulatory approval pathways. Evolving environments requires due diligence to stay abreast. As I said, you want to stay on top of this and the implications it has for your segment of healthcare products development. But also, I would say, be careful what you ask for. And I found something that when I first saw it, I was shocked and a little terrified. It's not a very good quality. I apologize for that, but it does give us food for thought. So Patrick, if you would share the video. Something to think about. As I understand, that video was designed to show a researcher helping to validate the learning of the rock, paper, scissors and the action to take. And as you can see, the robot learned a little more than I think he bargained for. So with that, I thank you for your time and attention. I hope it hasn't been too boring. It's a vision of the future and something that I passionately hope all of you will engage in and move forward as you continue to develop the amazing things that your science is bringing to the table. Any questions?
Yes, we did receive a few, Diane, so I'll go through those now. What is the current regulatory approach on AI-based tools that need to be updated when new data is available?
One more time. AI, are you talking about enabling technologies?
So there is a follow-up. What is the current regulatory approach on AI-based tools that need to be updated when new data is available? And then the second part of that, does FDA require the developers to present validation data periodically?
I think you'll see that in the discussion paper, and the answer is the regulatory terrain is shifting and changing. Right now, they're using this software as a medical device requirements as a basis for consideration. Validation and change management are the two critical key elements of where did the data come from? Do you know the source? Is it a credible source of information? And how are you validating that you got the data to the right place? So think of it as the technology's gathering element that would then give you a definitive defense, if you will. If you look at that discussion, you'll see that that's one of the topics, that 33-page discussion, one of the topics that the agency is seeking input for. So I would urge you to talk to them about that. I hope I answered the question. If not, shoot it at me again.
Okay, next question. Does the NIH have a formal definition of artificial intelligence? The NIBIB description of AI linked above says it's a feature where machines learn to perform tasks. This sounds more like a definition of robotics.
I don't know about the NIH's definition, but I have a feeling at this point, the definition that I read to you that you will find in the FDA's discussion will be adapted, because that's what you'll be expected to use with respect to submissions for product approvals. If someone from NIH wants to weigh in on that, I'm happy to hear it. I can repeat that definition if you'd like. It's a branch of computer science, statistics, and engineering that uses algorithms or models to perform tasks and exhibit behaviors such as learning, making decisions, and making predictions. That's what the FDA is supporting. Does someone from NIH have a different definition?
No.
No? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, if a human is overreading the AI ML output, for example, from an ECG, prior to giving it to a provider, does this make it a clinical decision support tool, or is it still a medical device?
That's a really interesting question, and I think that's one that's going to be bounced around for some time. If you look at the software as a medical device guidance, which is all we have right now, you will see that it's, and again, the draft guidances that have come out, you need to look at those very closely, because they're not finalized yet, but they're evolving very quickly. You have to consider that, are you in a defendable place where you are a educational tool, where you're providing information but not decision making? Or have you crossed over to giving the physician the answer that they then use to determine care, medical care? So I guess, and this is a standard answer that I know everybody hates, it depends.
Okay, how will or how does the FDA deal with learning health systems that are continuously evolving? For example, LLMs like GPT are frozen at a particular point in time. For instance, 3.5 was quickly replaced by GPT-4, which uses data frozen from 2021. How will FDA approve AI learning health systems that update, change, or learn new info every 6 months?
I think you just defined it yourself, which was there's going to be a point in time where you are defining what has been done and what its capabilities are, and then you're doing change management, which is the change control process that shows in the next period of time we will be gathering additional information, and we are now versioning to a next set of information. And again, how do you know where it came from? How do you know how it's working as you expect it to? All of those elements that we work with in a defined world, we've got to now focus more effort on the changing environment. What do you know from that world of data that it's gathering? Where did it get it from? What was the timeline of the information there? And is that data credible? And can you show that it migrated into your system through your algorithm effectively? You validated that the information is as you would expect it to perform or be, so that you have that credibility of your next version. What will they do if it's 6 months? Again, that's all up in the air at this point. All we know is that there is an expectation around validation, change control management, version control, and source of information verifiability. Is that a word? Verification. There you go. Next question.
Thanks, Diane. That's actually all the questions I see in the chat and Q&A. So if you would like to submit any more, please do so now. I did want to go to David Vorp. David, I've seen you. You've had your hand raised. Would you like to come off of mute if you had a question? Please go ahead, David.
Patrick, I'm not sure we can hear David. He's on mute.
Sorry, that must have been a mistake. My apologies.
Oh, no worries. So I do have while we're waiting for more questions to come in, I did want to note that we do have our session feedback poll open. So if you wouldn't mind taking a few moments to submit your responses there, we'd appreciate it.
And while you're there, Patrick, if you'd go to the last listing, I provided you with a number of different references that I relied on, but the Food and Drug Administration, the last one at the bottom, is the most critical one for you. I strongly urge you to go there and read that document. It's going to give you a lot of insights and hopefully help to give you some of the answers, better answers than I could give you.
And we did have another question come in, Diane.
Yes.
So the AI definition of learning, decision making, predicting does not include anything about the quality of the knowledge of the AI system. Has there been any FDA or other discussion about the efficacy or quality of knowledge of an AI system?
Yeah, that's where it's all kind of coming down to. You just hit the nail on the head. We've looked at what we were just talking about: change control, version management, validation and verification of the information, sources, credibility, and its ability to move from that source into your environment for utility that you have predefined is going to be critical. That's where the quality comes into play. The 10 machine learning practices that we talked about, that's been put out by the UK, the US, and Health Canada's FDA, UK's MHRA, and Health Canada, is a good place to start. That's what's embracing the quality aspects of what's expected. So I would start, look there. I think you'll get your question answered, but it's evolving. There's no clear direction yet. We're on a cutting edge, in a cutting edge environment right now. We have some level of applicable rules that we can see clearly relate to what we've done in the past, but in other areas, it's unknown yet. What's the best way to approach this? So you have an opportunity here, as the experts that you are and the scientists that you are, to bring forward to the agency an answer to those questions, that you believe this would be adequate to ensure the safety and efficacy of the information's application to your product in healthcare. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to be a part of the solution here, and I certainly hope all of you find a way to do so. As someone who's old as dirt and going to fall into that level where I'm going to need the applications of all of this AI and the work that you're doing as I get even older, I'm really hoping you guys get on top of this stuff and start putting out some real solutions here so I can live to be 150 and see what this all looks like. Marissa, do you want to take it from here?
That sounds great, Diane. Thank you so much for a wonderful, and as I knew it would be, a dynamic presentation. I really enjoyed it and certainly hope that the rest of you did as well. Thank you so much for going ahead and taking that evaluation poll. We truly do read every single response and just want to make our webinar series better and in better service to you as our innovator community. So just a few upcoming events and reminders to share with you as we wind down today. Again, please stay up to date with us by visiting our Catalyze website, www.nhlbicatalyze.org. There you can sign up for our email list, which is on our first page of the website. And with that, you can stay up to date with our webinars, our newsletters, and any relevant Catalyze happenings. Our summer webinar series will kick off next month. So June, we will be discussing readiness and fit for Catalyze funding mechanisms. And in July, we'll follow that up with Catalyze grant writing. So more specific to both of the funding mechanisms, how to craft your application and what we're really looking for in those applications. And any additional questions that you have can be directed to us by email. Our emails here are on the screen, catalyze_info@rti.org or NHLBI Catalyze at nih.gov. And we'd be happy to discuss with you further. So keep an eye out for the recording of today's presentation, as well as a downloadable copy of Diane's slides. And with that, thank you so much for joining today and have a great rest of your day.